Evening from Buckingham Palace. I'm Trevor Phillips and welcome to a Sky News Royal Special on the death of the Queen. Coming up in the next hour, the making of a monarch. King Charles is confirmed at an ancient ceremony, the Accession Council, televised for the very first time.
In carrying out the heavy task that has been laid upon me, and to which I now dedicate what remains to me of my life, I pray for the guidance and help of Almighty God.
Looking on, some of the most senior figures in the country, including every living Prime Minister. Gun salutes rang out across the United Kingdom in honour of the new king. Buckingham Palace confirms that the Queen's state funeral will be held on Monday, September the 19th, with the day declared a bank holiday. A united front. The Prince of Wales pays tribute to his grandmother and makes a surprise appearance in Windsor, alongside Princess Catherine, Prince Harry and Meghan. And from pop art to punk, we'll look at how the Queen became a cultural icon. Good evening from Buckingham Palace and welcome to this special programme on the death of the Queen. It would be easy to underestimate what has taken place today. It used to be said by courtiers that showing the inner workings of the monarchy would be unwise. Letting the daylight in on the magic might destroy the mystique. Well, the new king is already testing that belief to the utmost. Today started with live TV coverage of a ceremony never previously seen by the outside world. It ended with the king, his queen consort, the Prince and Princess of Wales, and the Duke and Duchess of Sussex on royal walkabout, pressing the flesh, literally embracing their people on the streets of Windsor and here outside Buckingham Palace. There's never been a day like it. This, perhaps, is a sign of what is to come. With our first report, our royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills, has more on the proclamation of the King.
It was ancient pageantry viewed through a 21st century lens. Ritual that was last seen 70 years ago, then marking the start and now the end of the Second Elizabethan Age.
With one voice and consent of tongue and heart, publish and proclaim that the Prince Charles Philip Arthur George is now, by the death of our late sovereign of happy memory, become our only lawful and rightful liege lord, Charles III.
As politicians past and present of all political persuasions, including every former living Prime Minister, gathered inside St James's Palace. The Privy Council at first assembling without the new king, but with his wife and son among them as Privy Councillors, to acknowledge formally the change of reign.
By the grace of God of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of his other realms and territories, King, head of the Commonwealth, defender of the faith, God save the King.
God save the King.
Moved into the throne room, they were finally joined by King Charles, his heir and Queen consort close by, as we were all able to witness a moment never seen before. A monarch holding his first Privy Council meeting, personally declaring his intention to serve.
My lords, ladies and gentlemen, it is my most sorrowful duty to announce to you the death of my beloved mother, the Queen. I know how deeply you, the entire nation, and I think I may say the whole world, sympathize with me in the irreparable loss we've all suffered. My mother's reign was unequaled in its duration, its dedication and its devotion. Even as we grieve, we give thanks for this most faithful life. I am deeply aware of this great inheritance and of the duties and heavy responsibilities of sovereignty, which have now passed to me. In taking up these responsibilities, I shall strive to follow the inspiring example I have been set, and in carrying out the heavy task that has been laid upon me, and to which I now dedicate what remains to me of my life, I pray for the guidance and help of Almighty God.
It's the personal touches, his family around him, the inkwell on the table, given to him as a gift by Prince William and Prince Harry. A reminder this is a time of mourning. A solemn occasion for all involved, members of the new cabinet and the current Prime Minister and representatives of the Commonwealth.
It was poignant because people were recognising how much Her Majesty the Queen had given us, but also welcoming the new King. And for the new King Charles to make those constitutional declarations in such a sober and profound way, I think was moving for everyone. And it is a moment I'm sure no one in that room will ever forget.
The ceremony, in essence, is one of welcome and fanfare, the crowds quickly adapting to a new national anthem and going further in their appreciation.
3 cheers for His Majesty the King. Hip, hip! Hooray! Hip, hip! Hooray! Hip, hip! Hooray!
Echoed in the City of London as the second proclamation was read on the steps of the Royal Exchange.
God save the King.
God save the King.
In the coming days, it will be repeated across the United Kingdom. For now, Buckingham Palace remains the focal point. At times, people being turned away because the crowds were too deep. Barriers now in place all along the Mall. But behind them, a king who wants to be seen, who wants us to understand what we're now witnessing, as like us, he's quickly had to adjust. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News at St James's Palace.
Joining me throughout this hour is Lord Woolley, Simon to his friends, Principal of Homerton College, Cambridge. Simon, you've just come from Palace of Westminster, where the MPs and members of the Lords have been sharing their memories of Her Majesty.
Yeah.
What is the atmosphere in there like?
It was an incredible time to be in that space. Many lords and ladies paying tribute to Her Majesty the Queen. And at the end, we took an oath to the new king. Speech after speech was laying bare the selfless public duty that this queen, this role model, this figurehead has shown, not just here in the UK, but across the world. So it's been an extraordinary day.
You spoke yourself tonight.
I did.
What did you have to say?
Well, I had to say about my experience right across the road there at Buckingham Palace 3 years ago, actually. Today, or almost today, when I was knighted by Her Majesty the Queen, and I took my son there, and I was as nervous as hell. I mean, who wouldn't be, right, on such a big occasion? But she leant into me. She made me feel comfortable. We started chatting, and in the end, joking. And when I came back to my son leaned into me and he said, Dad, you made the Queen laugh. What did you say? And I said, I can't tell you, son, it's a secret.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you there. Share the joke, but I know you can't.
But many speeches, you know, personal, general, extremely moving. And a lot of the peers were talking about that we need to, I guess, take a leaf out of Her Majesty's book when it comes to selfless public duty. The public service is sacrifice, she said in that documentary.
I think one of the interesting things that we've seen in the last 48 hours has been both from the royal family itself, particularly the King, but also from those who knew the Queen. That the experience has been very personal. People have given tributes. Mrs. May told a joke.
Anecdotes,
Anecdotes
wonderful.
by the million.
Yeah.
Do you think this is a sign of a sort of closeness, perhaps, to the royal family that people didn't quite expect?
Well, it's great to see. I mean, when I walked down there, I saw families with their kids. I saw one parent saying to the child, do you know how old the Queen was when she died? And the child said 96. How many years did she reign? She said 70. She was 6 years of age. You know, this is a nation coming together in sorrow, in grief, but actually united. United to say, this was our great monarch, and what it means to be British, what it means to be part of the Commonwealth. I'm really pleased. I'm really pleased that a nation has come together in this way, not only to celebrate the life of a great human being, but also to celebrate the incoming of our new king, a good man, who I think will reign in a similar, I guess, inclusive way as the Queen did.
Well, that's an interesting point, because actually what we've seen today, starting with the Accession Council, televised for the first time, so that the people who've never seen this before had it right there live, and the walkabout this afternoon. Do you think this is the development of a style? Of course, the Queen was the first to do the walkabout back in 1970, I think. But are we seeing a development of that openness?
Well, I think so. I mean, look, the King will do things his way. And I've been lucky enough to work with him, to collaborate with him, and I've seen what a human being he is. He is very personable. He likes to listen. He likes to be tactile, and I think that if he can govern in that way as head of state, and people warm to it, that I think people will get another view, a more fuller view of our King than often you read in the newspapers.
Do you think, just very briefly, that the new Prince of Wales will essentially be taking up some of his duties?
I do hope so. I mean, look, I've been involved in some of the bodies that the Prince was now King, that the Prince's Trust was involved with, and they are super important. For example, the Prince's Trust is up to over 2 million young men and women, often from Black, Asian, minority ethnic communities. It's so important. It's a pathway for them to develop. I hope that Prince William takes that baton and runs with it.
Simon, thank you very much for the moment.
OK.
We've talked a bit already about the different tone today. We know, and we've seen from some of the coverage of the last couple of days, that the Queen, with the first TV documentary, Prince Philip, the first royal to be interviewed on television, and, of course, the invention of the royal walkabout, did something extraordinary to bring the mystery of the monarchy down to the ground, down to the people. And it is estimated that about a third of the British people have actually seen or met her. So perhaps what we've seen today is a development of that. But to talk a little bit more about what we've seen, I'm going to turn now to our correspondent, Laura Bundock. Laura, new style today?
I think so. I mean, the day started, as perhaps you might have expected, this very ceremonial event, this ancient, this arcane, this traditional thing none of us has seen before, mostly because it's never been televised before, but in some ways very inaccessible as well. And then, of course, after that formality, you have the absolute accessibility of everything. So we saw the new king make his way from the palace along the Mall, stopping to then go out and greet people in person. And then perhaps of all, an even bigger surprise, a walkabout in Windsor. Not just the new Prince and Princess of Wales, but a royal source said at their request, the Sussexes as well. So you see, for the first time since 2020, for years now, two royal brothers brought together. And the late Queen always spoke about her soft power. And I think perhaps here it is. We see Princes William, Prince Harry, we know of their rift. It's been playing out so publicly. And yet the four of them and their wives, Kate and Meghan, walking in Windsor to go and meet the crowds. It was quite a moment. Is it the healing of that relationship? We don't know, but it certainly was an incredible moment. And again, having had the huge ceremony at the beginning of the day, this is the other side to the royal family. I think the new king, very keen to present, his replacement as Prince of Wales, the new Princess of Wales, and the two brothers as well, a sight perhaps we had not expected to see.
I thought it was very striking, the shot of the four of them walking out of the gates at Windsor, going to inspect the flowers. And I was thinking, we know that nobody knows exactly what's happened behind closed doors, but we know that these two operations have for quite a long time been working separately. And it did strike me that Her Majesty had a rather particular capability of rather softly exercising steel. And I just wondered whether her son, what we saw today, was her son's first exercise as king in essentially saying, I really am not bothered what goes on between you, but you have a responsibility to the country. Get out there.
We will never know what is said behind closed palace doors. But what we do know is certainly when the Sussexes arrived in England, there was no expectation they would meet any member of the royal family. But clearly, the events of this week have changed all that. To the extent they have changed that, we don't know. But you would like to think, perhaps, that the new king, as he tries to present himself as the future, he tries to show the continuity of the monarchy, that he will make it a meaningful role, that he will speak to the people, that he will understand their needs as he begins this new reign, is trying to involve his family as much as possible. How much of the family will be involved, as we know the Sussexes have no official royal role, we don't know yet. But certainly the pictures, I think, are historic images, from the pageantry at the start of the day to this relaxed moment and the bringing together of two brothers we did not expect to see side by side in this way.
And perhaps that was the signal that he gave in his address yesterday when he said, in really, I think, affectionate terms, that you could see the father in him, that he expressed his love for Harry and Meghan. And I wonder if that might have been the opening to say, you may not do the official, you may not be part of the firm, but you can certainly play a role in what we do as a country.
Well, it was a pivotal speech yesterday. It was obviously the tribute to his late mother, but it was very much him setting out, giving us a glimpse into what his monarchy will look like, the kind of monarch he will be. He referenced with those fitting and very touching words to the Queen Consort, to Camilla, to the Prince and new Prince and Princess of Wales, but he didn't leave out Meghan and Harry. And you do wonder, did that have anything to do with the olive branch request that the Prince of Wales made to his brother to join him today in Windsor?
Thank you, Laura. Well, Buckingham Palace have released details of key moments in the coming days. The state funeral for the Queen will be held on Monday, the 19th of September at 11 a.m. at Westminster Abbey. Tomorrow, Sunday the 11th, the Queen's coffin will leave Balmoral for Holyrood Palace at 10 a.m. Further proclamations will be read in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland devolved parliaments. On Monday the 12th of September, the King will deliver a speech at Westminster Hall. Before he travels to Edinburgh, the Queen's coffin will be taken to St Giles Cathedral. The procession leaves Holyrood at 2:35 p.m. and the service takes place at the cathedral at 3 p.m. The King will travel to Northern Ireland. On Tuesday the 13th, the Queen's coffin will be flown to London to rest at Buckingham Palace in the throne room, where it will be dressed with a crown, orb and sceptre. On Wednesday the 14th of September, the Queen's coffin will be taken in procession from Buckingham Palace to the Palace of Westminster. The coffin is then moved to Westminster Hall for lying in state. And lying in state will last 4 full days. On Friday the 16th, the King will travel to Wales. And on Monday the 19th, the state funeral takes place. And Laura is still with me. Laura, is this much as expected?
I think so. I mean, there is no doubt that the Queen herself would have had a big part in the planning of all this. We know the planning has been taking place for many, many years now, but we are getting the details now. So we know the exact movements, both of her coffin and also of the King himself too, as he wants to move around the rest of the United Kingdom to visit all the different nations. And so starting in Scotland, then moving to Northern Ireland and Wales on Friday, very much carrying on with the official duties, but as much as possible meeting people who he knows are sharing his grief, who are mourning with him as well. But I think a lot of eyes will now be on the moment from Wednesday when the Queen's coffin will be lying in state, and members of the public, I'm sure many of the people here, will be allowed the chance to file past her coffin and pay in person their respects. And if you judge the queues from her late father's funeral, when he was lying in state, the queues were enormous. The same for the Queen Mother as well. And you would expect the queues will stretch back. I think it will be remarkable scenes. And then, of course, a funeral, perhaps the like of which we've never seen before on Monday, not just the dignitaries and that, but the number of people, I think, who will want to be there in some way to watch the final farewell to the late Queen.
I think it'll be a remarkable event, won't it? I mean, I think the Queen Mother had something like 300,000 people who filed past her coffin, and I expect we will see a number, possibly a multiple of that for the Queen.
And not just here, but around the world. You know, we have the internet now, and the numbers will be millions and millions from here to every part of the world, I imagine, wanting to watch and witness what is a moment in history.
Laura, thank you very much indeed. Wrexham in North Wales was due to be celebrating its recent award of city status as part of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations earlier this year. Instead, tonight its residents are coming to terms with the death of the monarch and the beginning of a new era of royal rule. Caterina Vitozzi has been looking at how one community has been dealing with a new royal reality.
Today in Wrexham, as church bells rang out to mark King Charles's accession, inside, a model of the late Queen's crown came down. There was meant to be a party here today to mark Wrexham getting city status. Celebrations now obviously postponed.
The late Queen granted city status, and this was the day when we were going to have the formal official celebration to mark that. So we had a really big service involved. So at this point on Saturday morning, we were expecting the place to be sort of full of people and full of bustle.
What's the mood been like over the last few days?
It's just been a sort of, almost a sense of unreality that we can't quite take it in because she's been such a constant for the whole of our lives, really.
Wrexham has a royal pedigree, even if history hasn't always been kind to the place itself.
At Wrexham, they started a tour of a thoroughly depressed area where the old heavy industries have failed, and a desperate attempt is being made to attract new companies, specifically in light industry.
Things have been changing pretty fast here in Wrexham, the town becoming a city, its football team getting taken over by Hollywood actor Ryan Reynolds, and now Wrexham, and indeed the whole of Wales, has got a new prince and princess.
Alison Williams met Princess Diana here in 1991 and now welcomes her son, Prince William, and his wife taking on the role.
I think William and Kate are amazing. I think they will make a brilliant Princess of Wales. It's nice that they lived here for so long. It means that they're interested and they understand more about Wales.
The new Prince and Princess of Wales also bring with them this. A way of operating online that's as slick as in real life.
We both want to wish the Lionesses the best of luck for tonight.
But in a moment where the monarchy is looking to its future, for some, even these social media savvy younger royals feel somewhat distant.
On their Instagram, they post all these pretty things, this, that and the other. We don't get to see that. It would be impossible for them to feel relatable to anyone in our generation, at the very least, anyway, because of the struggles we're having with the inflation and, living crisis. You know, they don't have to deal with that as much as us lot.
That's what we all want as a country. We want them to bring the UK into the new generation and be more relatable. He's got to look back to his grandfather and his father's footsteps. For instance, you've got the Duke of Edinburgh Award and then the Prince's Trust Award.
In the moment the Queen died, royal roles shifted, titles changed, but the responsibility remains to engage the public and preserve a legacy. Katerina Vitozzi, Sky News in Wrexham.
The Queen was revered around the world, but she always had a special place in her heart, a soft spot for the Commonwealth, which she saw grow from just a few former colonies to a club of 56 nations, some of which were never part of the British Empire. And many people from those countries, including my own family, made the UK their home during her reign. Sky's Lisa Holland has been speaking to Commonwealth communities.
We all call you Grandma.
Yes.
In South London, friends and family call Louise the Queen of Brixton, not just because she's a great-great-grandmother who fostered more than 20 children, but at 96 years of age, she was born on exactly the same day as Queen Elizabeth II.
They call you the Queen of Brixton,
yes.
I hear.
Yes, yes, yes. When I had birthday comes up at that time, I said, it is the Queen's birthday and for me too. So I'm feeling good.
Louise came to Britain as part of the Windrush generation.
I shall strive to follow the inspiring example I have been set.
But as she watched the proclamation of a new king, she recalled the late Queen visiting Jamaica in the 1950s.
We waved to everyone, and we waved back.
In multicultural Brixton, scratch the surface and it's easy to find people who've made their home here with fond memories of the Queen's decades of global Commonwealth tours.
When I was at school, when I remember the helicopter land at the back of the school and I see her from that. Now is not the time for mourning. Now is the time to celebrate the lady life. She lived her life to the max.
She sort of made everyone feel like part of the Commonwealth, part of Britain, you know? So I just think like the world's a poorer place without her.
What's also clear is just how significant the Queen's global influence and standing was in so many countries around the world.
There is no Queen anywhere else, like only United Kingdom.
In this fabric shop, we met Bilal, who said it was watching the Queen from a young age which inspired him to want to move to the UK from India nearly 20 years ago.
We always heard about the news like Queen, sometimes picture come in on the newspaper, what's he done, like.
Michael, who grew up in Ghana, says the Queen's legacy will live on.
She's a very strong brand. Now we've got a king, he might probably follow the same footsteps that the mum left behind.
Britain's new king already has the goodwill of those who revered his mother to help build his own future as monarch. Lisa Holland, Sky News, South London.
It's a rather striking thing, isn't it, Simon, that when you go, I know you travel a lot, you go around the world, when people talk about the Queen, there's only one person, generally speaking, that comes to mind. How do you think we got to that place? Is it just her, or is it Britain, or our history?
Right. I think it's her. I think it's her quiet strength, her humility. And when going to these countries, far and beyond, I think that she wants to know about them. She wants to know about the people. And so they remember. And actually the same as with Prince Charles. I've just been in Malaysia and they were talking about his visit in 2017. I think the thing is being present and making every individual feel special. The Queen has done it. The Queen did it over 70 years and the Prince over 50 years. It's called duty and sacrifice, and they both know about it.
Of course, for many countries, the relationship with Britain has a complicated history. And I know you were in Barbados when the King went to the ceremony where they installed their new head of state, and so on. Now, it's a tricky thing, and the Queen seemed to have managed it extraordinarily well. But do you think that the new king is going to face some extra strains, because we hear talk about this in Australia, we hear talk about it all over the Caribbean, that it's time for that relationship to change?
Well, I think he showed leadership with that. I mean, he said to the people of Barbados, to Mia Mottley, the president, look, this is your choice. And the beauty about it is, when you have those adult conversations, you can make that choice. Some will, some won't. But you can remain in the Commonwealth. You can remain part of the family, do business, share culture. It's not I win, you lose. It's that we reset in a modern world with a modern Britain. And I thought he was brave, because I'm sure that there were detractors waiting for him to slip up, but he didn't. And it's no surprise to me that this morning the Bajan Prime Minister, Mia Mottley, paid tribute to him with his views about the climate change, and which is held for many decades, but also his vision for disadvantaged young people and making sure that they have a pathway, Trevor.
I heard that, and I thought that the interesting thing was that, in spite of the fact that, basically, a few months ago, Barbados said, thank you very much, had enough, we've got our own head of state. It was a rather warm tribute. Do you think that the vehicle, which I think the Queen, the late Queen, always thought of as the future, the Commonwealth, is right now going to be a priority for the new king?
I think so, because it binds us all together. And so, you know, we reset, we change the historical legacy of the enslavement of Africans and colonialism. I mean, you know, that has to be severed. And this is part of that process. What you get after that is up to us and how we negotiate it. But it has to be inclusive. It has to be respectful. I think that king now is well placed, not least because of the backstory. You know, he's been traveling around the world. He knows all these leaders. He knows their histories. And so I think if we have adult conversations, we can get to a positive place, Trevor.
What do you think the first thing he has to do to send a signal, I guess, that this is a new time, we are no longer, if you like, in charge of things, but we want to be friends and partners?
To be honest with you, I think he's been doing that. And people who know him and the countries that he's been to will also recognise that too. Now, how fast that moves and how it moves is between the countries and what their people want, and then negotiating them with the new king. He, above all, knows that our nation has to let go of that old guard.
OK. Lord Woolley, thank you very much indeed. Let's reflect on today's events now with Margaret Macmillan, the Distinguished Emeritus Professor of International History at Oxford University, who joined us now, I think, from Toronto. Good evening, Professor Macmillan. I understand that Canada is already got out of the blocks and has declared the new king of Canada. Is that correct?
It is, I think, and I mean, it is. But Canada has a strong relationship with the monarchy. We see it, I think, as a symbol of stability. We still have a Governor General, after all, and there seems to be very little will to change that.
Do you think that that relationship is stable for the future? Many people say that, and in fact, you know, people have been writing in newspapers today that we are about to face a reckoning which has been delayed by the personality and the respect and admiration in which the late Queen was held. But we're now going to have to face a reality in which other countries, Australia, Canada, Caribbean countries, some African countries, want to reset that relationship. Are you getting any sign of that in Canada?
In Canada, there is no strong Republican movement. Occasionally, we get a few flurries. I think we've been so focused on our own internal constitutional issues that we haven't really had time to think about the monarchy all that much. And I think also a lot of Canadians like their monarchy as a symbol that we're not the United States. And when you live next door to a great big power, you like to distinguish yourselves in some way. I think there's been a reset anyway. I mean, there's always been a discussion of the Commonwealth and what it should be. I think that the death of the Queen and the accession of King Charles III will see that conversation continuing, but I don't expect it to be a decisive moment. And as Lord Woolley was saying, different countries will make their own decisions about where they want to go with this.
There is, of course, a constitutional issue always. The Governor-General, of course, is the representative of the Crown in Canada. There is always an issue about the powers and whether there is intervention or not. Do Canadians, do you think, really just see the monarch as a symbol of a historical link and as, if you like, a cultural symbol that tells people, as you say, we are not America?
I think that's how Canadians see.
Or is there more to it than that?
I don't think so. Since the Second World War, governors general have been appointed on the recommendation of the Canadian government. So the British government has not interfered at all. And we now run our own affairs. We have been running our own affairs for a great many years now. I think people here have seen the Queen actually very much as people in other parts of the world, including the United States, have seen the Queen as someone who exemplified good, solid qualities. I mean, the words that keep coming out, dignity, decisiveness, doing her job, not complaining. These are the sorts of things that are being said in the American media, that are being said around the world. And so I think Canadians share that view, is here as an admirable person, an icon, if you like, of the ways in which we'd like to see heads of state behave, and someone who stood somehow above party politics. And so I think for Canadians, the Queen was as important as a symbol of that type of behavior and a symbol of those values as she was of any relationship with Britain.
Can we talk a little bit more about, if you like, the broad role, whether it's cultural or constitutional, of monarchy? There is a point of view that says that in the 21st century, with the spread of democracy, with the practice of liberal democracy, the maturity of parliamentary democracies, it is in some way anachronistic. What do you think in countries like the United Kingdom, that Canada, many of the Commonwealth countries that share a history, what do you think that the continuing practical, valuable role of monarchy might be?
Monarchy, as the way it's evolved, I think, and I'm thinking of the British monarchy in particular, can represent something that represents all the people, that stands above the political fray, that reminds us that we are part of one community. And I think that in itself is valuable. In other types of democracies, in republics, for example, the head of state is always a member of a party, or always has a political position. And sometimes that works very well. Sometimes you get presidents in the United States, for example, who are very divisive, who divide up Americans against each other. And I think the value...
I can't imagine who you're referring to, Professor Macmillan.
Oh, I'm very careful. I'm very careful. Well, I can look southwards very easily from where I am at the moment. But, you know, I think there is something of value in someone who says, look, I'm here for all the people. I represent a sort of continuity. I don't have any power. The British monarch doesn't have significant power as the monarch once used to have, but does represent that sort of continuity and represents the hope that we can actually on occasion see ourselves as part of one community.
There's another point of view about this, and I think it came up rather recently in Canada, which is that, of course, the relationship is one that is embedded deeply in history. And not all of that history is one that every country wants to remember. In the Caribbean, part of that history is slavery. In Africa, part of that history is the worst elements of colonialism, civil war, violent struggles for independence. And in Canada, of course, there is the history, perhaps, of the treatment of First Nation people. How do you think that this monarch is going to be able to deal with those issues, which I think perhaps are much more prevalent, much more present in the public mind than they might have been in her mother's time?
It's important, isn't it, to look at our past in all its complexity and not try and gloss over things that were done. And I think all I can say there is that we have to confront things that were done, and sometimes those were done in the name of the British Crown. Sometimes they were done by the locals, not necessarily in the name of the Crown. And quite often there was objection to the ways in which the Indigenous were being treated, for example, in Australia and in Canada from the British authorities. So I think we have to accept the past in all its complexity. We can't gloss over what happened in the past. But I think we also have to accept that individuals, countries, institutions change. And what we have to do is try and deal with the deep scars that have been left at the past and try and continue to try and build communities that actually work. And I don't see the fact that the Crown or indeed many institutions in Britain and in Canada were responsible for the bad treatment of some of their fellow citizens or fellow subjects should make us throw the whole lot out. I tend to be not a revolutionary on that. I think you're better trying to amend what you have and improve it than scrap everything and start again.
Finally, if I may just ask you quickly about what, if you like, a personal issue for Canada. Your Prime Minister, Mr. Trudeau, seemed very emotional when he responded on Thursday, I think it was, to the death of Her Majesty the Queen. And, of course, she had known his father as Prime Minister. What do you think that meant to him, that this person, who he seemed to have the deepest respect for and as a leader, what do you think that would have meant to him?
I can't speculate on what he was thinking or feeling, but perhaps something like a lot of us have been feeling, that when someone well-known dies, and the Queen is known around the world and was known around the world, when someone of that stature dies, I think we often all stop and reflect about our own parents dying or people that we love dying, that it makes us remember the transitoriness of life and that people you love do disappear from the scene. And so, who knows, but perhaps he was thinking of that. His father died, he's suffered losses in his life. And the Queen's death, I think, has been a moment for reflection. And as I say, I can't speak for him, but I'm wondering if that is part of it. Certainly, I know a lot of people I know are saying that. It makes you think again of those you've lost.
Professor McMillan, I think that's a very, very important and significant thought to end on. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you.
Princess Elizabeth, as she then was in Kenya when she learned from her husband the devastating news that her father, George VI, had died and she had become Queen. She ascended to the throne on the steps of the State House in Nairobi, unusually, following a proclamation in the Kenyan capital. That proclamation is similar to those which have taken place across the Commonwealth today for her son, Charles III. Alistair Bunkle sent this report from Nairobi on the Queen's Kenya connection.
Kenya is where the reign of Queen Elizabeth started, but her death has stirred mixed emotions for a country that didn't always have the easiest relationship with the late monarch. In 1952, the then Princess Elizabeth was on a royal visit with her new husband, Prince Philip. Her trip was cut short when her father, King George VI, unexpectedly died. The young princess became queen whilst on Kenyan land, a date that many still fondly remember. In Nairobi's Rail Museum, the Queen's royal visits are celebrated.
So when she visited Kenya in 1983, she used the rail train on her way to Nanyuki.
You've got ER there, Elizabeth Regina. Why is it important to preserve this?
We are happy because history was made in Kenya during that time, and we are glad to be part of that history.
But there is another history, Britain's colonial rule. The British crackdown on the Mau Mau uprising killed an estimated 11,000 Kenyans, and many held the Queen, as Britain's head of state, responsible.
Kenya was colonized by the British, and being colonized by the British, people have lost their fathers, they have lost their grandparents here.
Fighting for independence.
Fighting for independence from the colonies. So again, when this is a colonizer, there are people who, that is the feeling they have.
But the association with the Queen has also had some positives.
Yes, there are positives. I mean, the colonization also brought positive things, but again, there's the negativity bit of the losses that Kenya as a people went through.
Signs of British colonial history and the resentment of it are unavoidable in Nairobi. The city's main road was named Princess Elizabeth Highway when it opened, but since renamed Freedom Road after independence. Time has healed only so much here.
King Charles ascended to the throne, replacing the mother. This in itself marks a new beginning. I don't think a great fraction of Kenyans will look at it like that. The more critical ones will remain critical, will still continue to pose their hard and uncomfortable questions, and will demand economic justice, political justice, and reparations.
Britain and Kenya share a past and a future. Both are members of the Commonwealth. But a new king won't necessarily be a new beginning. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News, in Nairobi.
Let's stay for a moment with that theme, the reaction to the Queen's death in the Commonwealth. Despite a growing Republican movement in Australia, her death has overwhelmingly been met with public sorrow. Sky's Cordelia Lynch reports from Sydney on Australia's response.
It is a generation absorbing the impact of an era-defining monarch. Where the Queen once walked, her son must now follow. And here in Australia, it is a turning point.
We just loved her. We just loved her. The older we got, the more we could relate to her because she felt like she was just always there for us.
I'm just like a lot of other older Australians. We're just grieving because she was the Queen of Australia. A lot of people, that's lost on a lot of people.
It felt like the Queen was almost immortal at some point, you know. She's lived a long time, and yeah, I mean, even though she was quite old when she passed, it still came as a shock.
She was the first reigning monarch to visit these shores. It was 1954. She stayed for 58 days and left a population spellbound.
I want to tell you all how happy I am to be amongst you and how much I look forward to my journey through Australia.
Such outbursts of spontaneous affection.
Well, she loves this country. She loved this country, I should say. She'd been here 16 times, and you don't do that if you don't like the place. And she came back again and again and again, and she found the same thing again and again, warmth, affection. I think she really admired the resilience of Australians who work and live off the land here.
It's very nice to see you in person this time.
Yes, Your Majesty.
Scott Morrison admired her ability to make light work of calming his nerves. She had, he says, a regal humility.
That's why, you know, it's a cliche, we'll never see her like again, but we won't.
Where do you see that relationship with the Crown going?
There does remain a strong connection and an appreciation. I mean, our success in Australia is in no small part due to the stability of our democracy, of our constitutional system, and the Crown sits at the heart of that.
But it has already had a referendum on becoming a republic, and that conversation could reanimate.
Whatever debate has and may yet rage around Australia's relationship with the monarchy, this is being recognised as a period of remembrance and respect. And in a febrile world, that feels strikingly rare.
Their love for the institution has waned over time, but not their love for the Queen. That appears enduring. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, Sydney, Australia.
With the passing of Her Majesty the Queen, some sporting events were cancelled today as a mark of respect. However, some did go ahead, with those present taking the opportunity to pay tribute to the late Queen. Our sports correspondent, Rob Harris, has been looking at some of those sporting tributes.
We recognise her immense contribution to the nation, across the Commonwealth and around the world.
Cricket returning with solemnity and silence. Players and fans bonded by sport, uniting at the Oval to mourn their monarch. A rendition of God Save the King, the first broadcast at a sporting event since the accession of Charles, before the delayed start of England's test against South Africa. Cricket resuming while some other sports remain suspended in Britain. The powerful tributes here at the Oval showed why cricket leaders wanted their sport to resume, to honour, they said, the life and service of the Queen. She once used her Christmas broadcast to talk about the power of sport in being able to bring people together. And we've seen here just how that can take place.
I personally wouldn't have wanted to play. I'd have wanted 2 or 3 days just to reflect and think about all the wonderful things she's done. I can also understand the thinking about people coming together with sport. It's a fine line, and I suppose really at the end of the day, you do what you think's best.
Football was the main sport choosing to shut down. Food destined for Premier League stadiums like Liverpool donated to food banks. A decision is yet to be taken on whether domestic football is played next weekend before the Queen's funeral. In golf, play at the PGA Championship at Wentworth was suspended following the Queen's death on Thursday. It restarted on Saturday after the government left it at the discretion of each sport whether to hold events. Rugby union had split decisions across the United Kingdom, with games only in England this weekend. Horse racing, the sporting passion of Queen Elizabeth that once gave her success in the Gold Cup at Ascot, resumes with the St Ledger on Sunday. At the cricket in London, those no longer able to play sport this weekend taking the chance to pay respect.
I was annoyed that I couldn't play football, but happy to come here to watch the cricket.
When kind of everyone just went silent and that was unprompted, it was it was quite special.
A bit emotional, I got a little bit choked up, I have to admit. I'm a monarchist, just how I've been brought up and what I believe, and I thought it was really moving actually, yes.
In a nation grieving, sport bringing people together to express condolences and gratitude to the Queen's service and reign. Rob Harris, Sky News, The Oval.
Our correspondent Laura Bundock is here with me once again. Laura, somebody rather unkindly said today they know that there's continuity because today there was an England batting collapse. But more broadly, I think sporting fixtures, it showed that there's very deep feeling in the country. And I think we're seeing that in the turnout here and at Windsor, aren't we?
I think so. And what I think is striking, being stood here outside Buckingham Palace, not just the silence, but the size of the crowd and the fact that here we are at this time of night and that the people are still coming. There are queues of people walking, as I say, quietly, peacefully, many of them carrying flowers, and a lot of those flowers are now being moved. And the size of that mound of flowers is quite something. It is huge. And we saw in Windsor as well with that remarkable impromptu walkabout, a walkabout we did not expect to see, not just the Prince and Princess of Wales, but of course at their invitation, Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex as well. We are seeing deep crowds there. And I think you notice as well, the crowds ranging in age. It's not perhaps the sort of crowd you would expect at a royal event. I was here for the Jubilee, and certainly I think you would recognise the crowd there. But here I feel it is a wider range of people. And the new king spoke of that in his speech yesterday, that very public, his important first address really to the nation, talking about his recognition of the backgrounds and beliefs and the range of that. And I think that is reflected in the people who are coming. And of course, these crowds will grow, particularly once the Queen's coffin arrives back in London for the lying in state, where you are imagining thousands and thousands and thousands will want to turn up to file past.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, one thing that seems clear is that there's going to be going on for 9 or 10 days, and you would expect, if you like, the intensity to drop, but there's no sign of that at the moment.
absolutely the opposite, I think. I was struck late last night walking through the parks how many people were still here. And again tonight, this crowd is moving, and it is moving in one direction towards the palace. And as I say, in Windsor, you saw on the long walk the deep crowds there. And you can only imagine that these crowds are going to grow and grow, crescendoing towards Monday week, when, of course, the big state funeral will take place, and you'd expect many people here will want to be as close as they can or in the vicinity of such an occasion.
Well, I suspect you and I will be in this vicinity a lot over the next week and a bit. Laura, thank you very much indeed. Now, over the course of her reign, the Queen became perhaps the most photographed person ever to have lived, and her image used in everything from pop art to punk. Katie Spencer has been looking at the life of a cultural icon.
She was the most portrayed woman in the world, her face in profile ubiquitous, her image at the core of British culture. The Queen's coronation was groundbreaking, the first ever to be televised, watched by 27 million. It was the premiere of sorts for the lifelong pivotal role she'd play in maintaining the allure of brand Britain.
I remember when I was a little girl, a little teenager, when she was engaged to Prince Philip, who was about the best-looking man in the world. I mean, everybody at school had a crush on him. And I kept scrapbooks of the Queen. Everything that was in the papers or the magazines I cut out. And it was Princess Elizabeth's wedding. And she was a fairy tale princess. She really was. She was gorgeous. She had a handspan waist, big, wonderful eyes. We all just loved her.
And decades on, record audiences once again tuned in for her Platinum Jubilee.
Perhaps you would like a marmalade sandwich. I always keep one for emergencies.
So do I. I keep mine in here.
Celebrations which brought people back together following the challenges of the pandemic. During lockdown, of course, many binged on The Crown, one of the countless screen portrayals fuelled by the relentless public infatuation with this woman.
If you imagine I'm going to drop everything and come down to London before I attend to my grandchildren who've just lost their mother.
Celebrated by our greatest artists, from Lucian Freud to Andy Warhol, her portraits now a huge part of her legacy.
I remember when I was first commissioned, it was a daunting prospect. You know, the Queen, the most portrayed woman in history. I asked if man would like to rest in between shots. That'd be fine. Just, I was conscious of all the light onto her. So she closed her eyes and that was the moment. It was, you know, it didn't go in there to capture that moment, but being so tuned to meditation at the time, you know, in that moment of calmness, you know, there's a kind of vibration to it, and which we all resonate at.
Sitting for artists was part of her cultural duty, but she also inspired some significant unofficial art. An anti-establishment target epitomised on the cover of the 1977 Sex Pistols single, her defaced likeness an easy act of rebellion.
If you went to most West Indians' home at the time, they would probably have a picture of the Queen on the wall as well as a picture of Jesus.
While rock photographer Dennis Morris's parents admired the Queen, for his generation she represented everything he was rallying against. In 1977, when the punk movement collided with the Queen's Silver Jubilee, he was following the Pistols' provocative boat trip on the Thames.
At that time, the monarchy was very, very strong. We were not particularly liked for being anti-monarchy in that sense. As I grew older and knew more and more about it, I have a very, very deep respect for the Queen. And my respect for the Queen is this, that basically it takes a lot to hold something like that together in the way she has over the years. So, you know, for me, big respect for that in that sense.
While many British artists have clashed with the establishment, the Queen, a loyal supporter of creativity, handed out thousands of honours for services to the entertainment sector. For 70 years, she was champion of the arts. For those who embraced her magisterial authority or rebelled against it, she inspired. Her influence over British culture, irrefutable and unique.
Thank you for everything.
That's very kind.
Katie Spencer, Sky News.
That's all for this special programme. Coming up next is News at 10 with Gillian Joseph and all of today's historic developments.
It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, live from Buckingham Palace. The making of a monarch, King Charles is confirmed as the nation's sovereign at an ancient ceremony broadcast to the public for the very first time.
In carrying out